They say we're loud, opinionated, afraid, telling us to hush, dim our historical light. But darlings, we're the heartbeat, sharp and keen, unveiling the truth behind the silver screen.
History harpies hear us roar. Through the ages we explore. Fashion, film, and TV's lore. Spilling tea, wanting more.
Hi, welcome to History Harpies.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Christine.
And this is episode 13, which will be focusing on the illustrious and erotic career of Nicole Kidman.
And the reason why, of course, we are looking at Nicole, who is my queen. The reason why we are looking at Nicole is because of the shocking news of the breakup of her marriage with Keith Urban, which just broke a few days ago and really was a surprise, I think, to everybody, except perhaps Nicole and Keith themselves.
It was almost the level of shock of when she broke up with Tom Cruise.
Yes.
And although there were always speculations, particularly during the filming of Eyes Wide Shut, that things were
rocky
between the two of them, it seemed like Nicole and Keith were copacetic.
It did seem that way. And certainly it was always easy to identify some perhaps strange in the marriage between Nicole and Tom. Precisely that she never seemed really comfortable with Scientology.
Right.
But there weren't those kinds of dynamics as far as the public could tell about the marriage of Nicole and Keith. They were always seen together.
Red carpet.
Award shows,
She
events.
supported him at the Country Music Awards. He supported her at the Oscars. They had 2 children.
Affectionate, the social media messages to each other.
Yes,
Happy
very
anniversary.
supportive. And
very
good looking together.
good
As, of course,
looking.
Tom was too. But it was a very attractive and, endearing couple, and everybody was rooting for them.
And especially, of course, had been sympathetic that everyone knew that the marriage had started in a kind of rocky way, that Keith Urban had to go to rehab very soon after the marriage with Nicole. Nicole was also very open about the fact that when they met about 20 years ago, that they were both in vulnerable places, they were both lonely. It really seemed to be this moment of kismet, that they found each other and had this family, especially because, again, that everyone knew that her children with Tom Cruise apparently had cut her out as not being a Scientologist, and that there had been that rockiness. One of the things that I think was most upsetting about the news the other day about Keith and Nicole was that Nicole was, the word that some presses used was blindsided. That is the exact same word, if we can remember, that was used about the breakup with Tom Cruise.
Interesting.
But that was also something that Nicole wasn't expecting it, that she also in that case wanted to work on the marriage. So Lauren and I thought that not only would we look at Nicole this time around, but that particularly we would look at the films that she has done in her long and super varied career, films that are more erotic, that lean more on her power, her sexuality, her beauty.
And then also focus around the theme of marriage.
Most
of the films or all of the films that we're talking about today deal with Nicole in marital situations. In one case with her actual husband at this time. And she's made many films and TV shows and stuff on Netflix or HBO, and she has a long career and a very, very varied and diverse career in terms of roles. But the films today are really around the marriage and erotic genre.
And it does seem to be the case, if rumor holds, that making these films has been a point of contention in both of her marriages. There is the rumor that it was Keith Urban's reaction against disapproval of the film Baby Girl that perhaps spurred a separation. Obviously, we don't know, but that was the rumor. There was a rumor with the breakup of the Tom marriage that she had had an affair with Ewan McGregor during the making of Moulin Rouge. Again, who knows?
Who knows?
But obviously, there are lots of ways in which her work as an artist, as an actor in these films, seems to be bleeding into real life and vice versa. At least, again, that is the rumor, we should stress.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So where do you think we should start, Christine, in discussing this? If we think about the chronology of these films, we're talking about Dead Calm, we're talking about To Die For, we're talking about Eyes Wide Shut, and we're talking about Baby Girl. And again, one could argue that it all started with Dead Calm, and that we see a sort of fresh-faced, very young Nicole Kidman, so beautiful in Dead Calm with her Aussie accent.
Which we don't often hear during her career.
No. And that film, again, about a marriage and about a tragedy. Multiple tragedies. But a tragedy that led to this alienation of the two of them on this boat. Right. Which then led to
chaos and violence.
And potentially murder.
Yes, and murderer. So for those who haven't watched this film, this is absolutely one of my favorite Nicole Kidman films.
Yes.
And what is remarkable about it is that she is so young when this movie comes out.
Yes.
It's 1989. She's what, 21, 22?
Right.
And it really is an Australian film. Almost nobody is in this film, right? There's basically three people and a handful of cops and doctors at the beginning. And Nicole stars opposite Sam Neill, a huge star in Australia, who then also transitioned to American films and was very, very successful. Directed by Philip Noyce, who was a very successful Australian film director, who also then did a lot of mainstream films. And the setup is a really painful one, that this is a couple who have lost their toddler child in a terrible car accident. We even see the child fly through the windshield. It's really terrible. Yes. And so we have this couple that goes off on a yachting trip in order to get over this grief. And so one thing that is interesting to me about this, and I don't know if you would agree, thinking about all films, this is a film where we have a married couple at the beginning. Right. There's, as strange as that sounds, that seems abnormal to me. Right. There's no struggle really between the couple. Right. There's no sense that it's two people who need to find each other. No. There's not even really a sense that it's two people who need to recover each other. Right. It is a unified married couple who are struggling with grief. Yes. This unimaginable grief of having lost this child.
Yes. And part of the reason for that, I suspect, this film is an hour and 30 minutes long, and the Billy Zane of it all happens quickly. And so there can't be too much, talky, marital strife, because Billy Zane is going to come and terrorize them very quickly. So it's this interesting fusion of genres, of sort of marriage and trauma within the marriage genre, but then you have a sort of serial killer genre as well, a horror genre, thriller, whatever, however we want to think of it, in the Billy Zane character, who comes on board, literally, very, very quickly into the film. So we do see Nicole have the nightmare, and we see Sam Neill comforting her, and obviously she hasn't gotten over that, but now she's going to have a lot more to get over.
And certainly the way that the film is framed, right, is that this is an episode, this terrible episode with murderer Billy Zane getting on the boat and Sam Neill being away from the boat, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But this is framed as a therapeutic event for them, as horrific and nightmarish and traumatizing.
Yes, it is.
The Billy Zane-ness is so awful, but nevertheless, this is something that helps. We are meant to think, right? I believe that this is something that helps pull them out of that.
Helps them
rebuild, because in part, both of them, but especially Nicole's character, Ray, has to be so active, right? So powerful. And one of the things I love about this film, and I really, really love it, is that we have, it's not just the cliche of saying we don't have a woman who's a victim. But Nicole, she's not a victim in this film at all, right? No. She suffers things.
Of course.
But also, by the same token, right? It's 1989. We don't have this kind of cliched girl boss, right? Like, she's not like karate chopping him, right? No. Or I did my self-defense training, my Krav Maga.
No.
It is this almost kind of homespun, right? I'm on this yacht. I am using the tools that I have.
Improvisation.
And you get the sense that this is a normal woman.
Yes.
Right? Who is trying to fight off this killer.
Right.
But again, in a very realistic way. It's almost sort of, Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I
so
find that refreshing.
I agree. It's a normal woman, a woman who's been married to a man in the Navy for a long time, who obviously has these nautical skills that is very important to the storyline and to her own survival. Nonetheless, she's not some sort of superhero. She is a normal woman who is in many ways overpowered by Billy Zane in much of the film, who can't get away from him in much of the film, but nonetheless is able to, take him out. Eventually take him out and to outsmart him and to find ways to survive alone on the boat with Billy Zane.
You know what's, we won't get off on this tangent, I promise.
Okay.
But in some ways, and I hadn't really thought of this before, the film reminds me so much of this classic Audrey Hepburn film, Wait Until Dark, where Audrey Hepburn plays a blind woman who is alone in her apartment, right? Alan Arkin is the evil villain who has to come and get the heroin that's hidden in the apartment. And the entire thing is how this blind woman who has not felt particularly independent, she's recently blinded in the film, that she is able again to use both her ingenuity and her sort of natural, use her blindness in effect against him. And Nicole's character in Dead Calm really reminds me of that, where we're given this exceptionally realistic, in the sense of the where she is on this boat, these particular tools, her own knowledge. She is able to use her sedatives against him. She's able to use the fantastic harpoon gun, right, the gun. And so I think that's what's great about that is we keep cutting right back and forth between, as you said, Sam Neill's character has these skills that he is using at the same time on the other boat to try to get back to her.
Yes.
And so we also then she is neither super vulnerable, but it's also not the case that he is helpless either, right? They both are incredibly able people.
They're both very resourceful people, and she, most importantly, is able to use her sexuality in a way that will, make him, Billy Zane, very, very vulnerable. And she's able to read him in certain ways, but also know that if she resists him, that's going nowhere. Going nowhere. She has much more power if she works with him, if you want to use that, works with him for a while and then can gain his trust and then can sedate him, harpoon him, and take him out.
Hog tie him,
and,
when he's unconscious.
Right. And take him out in all kinds of ways. And again, the interesting thing for me about both Dead Calm and To Die For, the short time of both of them.
Yes,
in terms of
absolutely.
Both of these films are under, they're an hour and a half, an hour and 40 tops.
The pacing is snappy.
And the pacing is quick. The writing is tight.
Yes, absolutely.
And a lot of things happen. And what's interesting is that the storytelling in both of them is one in which you see the empowerment of Nicole's character really kind of come to fruition very quickly, but that she is adapting in both situations, actually, and that she is able to manipulate people. But there is also this real arc, right? There's the arc of, and we can get to Die For in a minute, but in Dead Calm, the arc of Billy Zane coming on and Sam Neill and Nicole trusting him for a minute. For a minute,
a literal minute.
Until they find out that, terrible things happened on this other boat and he's not who he seems. And obviously they can't trust him and that he is out to, do no good. And that ability to shift gears so quickly is really admirable in the film.
I agree. It's really remarkable. And again, Philip Noyce went on to do all of these action films. He did all of the Harrison Ford, Jack Ryan films. And I think that the economy is so great because we also feel like we have a great sense of their marriage so quickly, right? A sense of the both of them so quickly. And as you say, Billy Zane is incredible in this movie.
He is.
He's so frightening, genuinely
He is frightening. And he's frightening in a way that's just so funny because he's like shirtless and just walking around, and he doesn't have a gun. There's nothing about him ostensibly that you would think would make him frightening, but he is.
But he is frightening.
He is frightening, and especially the idea of this vulnerable. You think she's vulnerable in the beginning, and she is vulnerable because of the grief from her son, and also just a woman alone on a boat. And that this man who you now know has, maybe dismembered people. Right, dismembered and murdered people on this other boat is now taking her captive. And you don't know what he's capable of. But he's just standing there in like a bathing suit. And that's
dancing.
That's what's just so crazy about it, is there's nothing on and he's so good looking.
Yes.
And there's nothing about him that is frightening on the surface, which is why they take him in, of course. But then he turns so quickly. And I do think one of the great suspenseful scenes, again, even though it's so simple, is when Sam Neill is rowing the boat right back to his boat, and he's shouting to Nicole Kidman's character to jump off the boat, because he knows now that Billy Zane is a murderer. And again, you're like, how do you get so much suspense? It's so much out of this this man is simply rowing a boat, shouting at his wife, and it's incredibly suspenseful. It's incredibly just so dramatic. But we do, I think, have to talk about a little bit more about how Ray does use her sexuality. Okay. Because I think that I was actually looking at the Wikipedia, and the Wikipedia about the film, which I think is, I don't know if I agree with, I just want to know what you think about this. So it says, all right, Ray uses her sexuality, right? She does start to kiss, because we should make clear, she needs to buy time. Yes. Because she needs to return, she needs to get her boat back to where Sam Neill is. And Sam Neill tells her the boat is sinking. I have about 6 hours. And so she then has to basically keep herself alive, right? And find a way to get her boat back to where Sam Neill is, which Billy Zane doesn't want to happen. And so she does start to kiss him. They do start to take their clothes off. This is a ruse, because then by the way, I'm really glad the dog dies in this film, because the dog basically stymies her at every turn. There are many examples, and the dog gets the key to the motor. The dog again is sitting there. The dog is not in her corner. He's barking when she tries to get the gun. And so, but we do have, and this is, I thought it was interesting, Wikipedia says, she goes back and she is coerced to have sex with him. And I would not describe it that way. I think that's really, what she's doing is so much more complex, right? She's willingly having sex with him. She is. But again, on a means to an end. As a means to an end. She's buying time. She's gaining his trust. She's trying to establish a scenario where she can then later, again, she doesn't know she's going to drug him, but where she can put him in a situation where she has the upper hand. And that if it were just a flat out rape scene, she would never be able to accomplish the things that happened next. And even her saying, well, I'm going to get these cigarettes for afterwards. Yes, for afterwards. Which tells him, okay, she's in it. She's up for this. And we're going to then run off together, right? This husband is now dead. He's on the sinking boat, and we will go have this life together, murdering people or doing whatever they're going to do. Right. And that he has a certain comfort level with her after the sex that, again, the economy, I don't think, can be underscored enough. Because after the sex happens, right, the time between his demise is pretty quick. It is. I mean, she's running all over the boat, and she's starting to shoot the harpoon at him. And we see, of course, Sam Neill trying to struggle out of his predicament, but there just isn't that much time. Yeah. And so I think the sex scene is used in a very, very effective way. I mean, it certainly isn't romantic. I mean, you see her. No, it's not romantic. You see her face. She is just plotting in effect. Yes. You see it's not exploitative, right? There's no nudity. You see her disgusted by it, but at the same time, you see her empowered by it. Yeah, too. Absolutely. I really think it's a remarkable scene. And so we have then, if we can sort of sum up, right, Dead Calm, I think, is remarkable for so many reasons, right? We see this strong marriage.
They are so charismatic. I've always wondered why they didn't make another film together because they have so much chemistry.
Yes, they do.
And again, Sam Neill is just so handsome.
He is so handsome.
So he's so handsome. She's so beautiful. Again, their chemistry is wonderful. You do believe that they are a deeply in love couple.
You do.
You want them to go on and have a wonderful life together.
You do.
And as we talked about before, there absolutely is the sense that they are equal partners, right?
Yes.
Equal in resourcefulness, equal in their partnership. And lots of flare guns are shot at the end. And again, there's no more dog, which I think is a good thing. So
one at Billy Zane's head, which blows
off. You know, I will say, and then maybe we should start talking about To Die For. I do wonder, seriously, I'm not kidding, if in 1989, James Cameron sees Dead Calm and he says, all right, boat that is sinking, right? A guy on this little piece of like wood out in the ocean, Billy Zane, Titanic. Yes.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? I will say one of my favorite scenes in this film, and a very, very memorable, probably the thing that sticks with me, is that hair washing scene at the end.
Oh, it's beautiful. But then creepy.
Creepy. Well, again,
creepy.
I mean, when he comes back
with his
bloody hands and the blood in her hair, and that to me is just it's priceless.
It is priceless. But again, we have this very tender scene, right? When it starts with Sam Neill washing her hair, right? And then he goes to get her breakfast, and you're like, Sam Neill's so fantastic. But so it's interesting though, because of course, Dead Calm, we have Nicole's character using her sexuality in order to stymie a murderer. But then of course, we have a very different use of her sexuality in To Die For, where she is trying to get someone murdered using her sexuality.
Correct.
So do you want to tell our audience a little bit about To Die For?
Okay.
For those who haven't seen it?
So To Die For, when did To Die For come out?
1995.
Okay. So to Die For is, we have American Nicole.
We
also
Nicole.
have a much blonder Nicole.
Yes.
She's not quite fully blonde, but she is not core redhead Nicole.
Not redhead curly Nicole.
No, not
sadly.
She is straight-haired Nicole.
Straight hair.
And American Nicole.
Jane Pauley hair Nicole.
Yes. So To Die For is about a very, very ambitious young woman named Suzanne Stone, who marries a Matt Dillon, who is, again, another gorgeous man who is part of this Italian family. They own a restaurant. They're in New Hampshire. And she marries him. It appears they're in love.
It's a little unclear.
But she is going to be using him for something. It's clear she's going to be manipulating him for something. The film is told as sort of as a flashback, a sort of over narration of Kidman's character, and later you sort of find out why. But she's really telling the whole story. And the two are married, and then her ambitions to become basically the next Barbara Walters, Jane Pauley, any major kind of
wants to be on television,
broadcast person, and even in a sensational way, it doesn't matter. She wants to be on TV. She wants to be famous, and she sees herself as much better than Dylan and Dylan's character, and and just using him basically to get ahead. And so over the span of the film, she does get a job at a sort of local TV network, and they're sort of a bunch of nobodies, and she's still a nobody, but she thinks she's a somebody, and she goes into a high school to film a kind of quasi-documentary, or what she thinks is a documentary anyway, which she thinks is going to be like the next great, who knows what, exploration into on I don't know, Dateline or something. Yes. And she meets these three young people, played by Joaquin Phoenix and Casey Affleck, and I can't remember the actress.
Allison
the woman, Lydia. But anyway, she quickly gets into a romantic relationship with Joaquin Phoenix. They're having sex all over the place. He is hot and heavy for her, and she manipulates him and Affleck and Lydia, the other character, to murder Matt Dillon. Now, why does she want to murder Matt Dillon? Because Matt Dillon and his family are saying, "Hey, you're too ambitious and
settle down.
We want you to run the restaurant with us and have babies, and we're not on board with you trying to move to New York or LA, and we just want to stay here, and we want you to be basically a housewife." And she is not about that.
She is not about that. And there very much is the sense that the reason why she starts this sexual relationship with Joaquin Phoenix's character is because she wants to manipulate him, right?
Yes.
There's no sense of like,
No.
I'm just doing this for kicks,
No.
right? Even sexual kicks, that absolutely this is the best way to get this 15-year-old kid, or however old he's supposed to be, to murder my husband. And one thing that the movie doesn't really make super clear, although it kind of alludes to it, is why she doesn't just want to get a divorce. She's like, you're going to take my dog away.
Right,
He's not,
take the
I won't get the
condo
condo or the
away.
car. And so the art, but of course what she tells Joaquin Phoenix and the other kids is that her husband is abusing her, that she's being beaten, and this is basically the hook that she uses to persuade them to, or him, to murder Matt Dillon's character.
Right. The other thing about the divorce is that it's never made entirely clear that this couple, although we know her motivations, that they're fundamentally unhappy.
Yes.
I mean, there is this point of contention between them.
Absolutely.
Right? He wants kids, she doesn't want kids.
She wants to be famous,
but we
he wants to stay
never
put.
see them blowing up.
Never.
We never
Never.
see them, in some kind of really heated argument. And so the film never gets to a point where you could see divorce as a sort of rational end to this.
Yes. And they've only been married for a year.
Right.
When this whole murder plot begins.
Right. And they are, I guess, from his perspective, a seemingly happy couple.
Yes.
I mean, she may be a little off the rails in terms of wanting to be on TV, but he also is so enamored of her. He keeps telling his family, his sister.
He wants to watch her broadcasts every night.
Right. She's doing the weather, and he's like, oh, she's so smart. She knows everything. She's going to be a superstar. And he's very encouraging of her in the beginning of the film.
Yes, absolutely. But then it changes when it becomes clear to him that her ambitions are getting in the way of what he sees as a normal family life.
Right.
So we do have, I would say in some ways, I don't know if you would agree with me, to me, this is absolutely not, ironically, this is not Nicole's sexiest role. In some way, maybe it's because the sexual relationship is so instrumental, and because the character herself is so unappealing, right? We're not supposed to like Suzanne.
No.
At all, right?
No.
She's not a villain, but she, of course, is a villain. She's not a villain in the sense that Billy Zane is a villain.
No.
But she is.
She's the most manipulative person in the film by far.
Yes.
Unless we consider at the end,
The mafia
the
person
mafia,
who is going to murder her.
Right.
Yes.
But she is certainly unlikable, and she's definitely portrayed as somebody who's conniving and taking advantage of these high school kids in a very obvious way.
Including Lydia.
Yes.
Who seems to have kind of half, I have a crush on you, and half I look up to you and I want to be like you.
Right.
And this is something, of course, that Suzanne mocks Lydia for, right? Your quote-unquote lesbian tendencies. She sort of throws this at Lydia at the end. And so we have sort of back and forth, right? This idea that Suzanne does pose as being sort of a friend, someone who's finally listening to these very kind of disadvantaged, even abused kids. We have Lydia admit that she was sexually molested by her stepfather or her mother's boyfriend. And this is something that Suzanne knows about and really, again, uses in order to pursue her own ends.
She also, again, at the end of the film says, look, I come from a good family.
Yeah.
I've gone to college, even if it was junior
Yeah.
college. Like, who's going to believe you?
Yes.
Basically, dirtball,
Yeah.
high
White
school
trash.
kids.
Yeah.
Totally trash over me. I'm a member of the community. I'm married to this established family now. And so there is a kind of class dynamic as well in terms of her saying, I'm going places and maybe not to somebody on the outside or real broadcasters, right? She's a nobody. But in this community, she's a somebody.
She's a somebody.
And she's she's doing the weather, and especially when they start, interviewing more people knew her, and even the Wayne Knight character, who is terrific in this film.
He really is.
He becomes kind of enamored with her too, even as he
all
says,
the gumption, all the
Yes.
pushiness. This is so admirable, right? That she's just she's a train, right? You kind of get out of her way, or you don't, as the case may be, and as Matt Dillon finds out. And one thing I do really like about it, but is also disturbing, is that, as you say, it is about class. Again, the whole sort of like New England sort of white trash working class stuff, in some ways hits a little too close to home, right? I feel like I know all of those people. but we absolutely have. I have to say, I think Joaquin Phoenix is so unbelievable
He is.
in this. Again,
He
Billy
is.
Zane is so good in Ted Kong. Joaquin Phoenix is spectacular.
He is spectacular in this, and so just so
Yes.
believable. And I think everyone at some point knew a high school kid
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely. Yeah.
And that would become so sort of ensnared with Nicole Kidman. You understand why he's willing to kill her
Yes,
husband.
you do.
You understand why he believes he's going to run away with her, and everything she promises him, of course, is a lie. But you understand where he's coming from.
He's basically, he is a much, much, much less intelligent John Bender, right? Again, no, seriously,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And but someone who has sort of no paths, right? No pathways out of what he sees of this particular town, right? In this family and his own socioeconomic class, and yes, and she really manipulates it, and so that's what I think is so, in some ways, kind of weird about the film and Nicole in it. So Gus Van Sant, right? Gus Van Sant, he films Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know if you agree with me on this. He films Joaquin Phoenix as if basically Joaquin Phoenix is the object of his own desire. I think that's true, right? He films him as if he is sort of the kind of hustler that Gus Van Sant had River Phoenix be in My Own Private Idaho, right? If that made any sense.
Okay.
And so I do think that when we see Joaquin Phoenix, sort of shirtless with his little necklace on, that reads to me as like Gus Van Sant wants to depict him as a sexual object, right? Not in a negative
No,
way.
I understand.
But then I also think that the sex scenes, of course, with them, they're so disturbing and not erotic in the sense that, because we do know her motivation is so venal, so awful, so manipulative. And that's, I think it's really hard, again, to read her sexuality in the film. Not that Nicole isn't fantastic. Nicole is fantastic.
But her sexuality is what attracts all of these people to her.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's no question that, the guys are like, their mouths are hanging open.
Yeah.
Of course.
Trying to look up her skirt.
Right. Of course, Matt Dillon,
Yeah.
just like that she's the sexiest thing ever. And she's hot in the film.
She's beautiful.
She's gorgeous
She's
in the
beautiful.
film. She's super sexy.
Her body is absolutely rocking.
Is incredible. Her hair and makeup, even though it's supposed to be kind of gaudy, is
still fantastic.
She still looks amazing.
Yeah.
And so again, the interesting thing about Joaquin Phoenix is that he is so vulnerable, but at the same time, he is very sexual.
Yeah.
And he is, you wonder, like, well, was he a virgin, right? Maybe not, right?
It's hard to tell.
Because he is such a sexual being, but he's also just like a horny
Kid.
teenager.
Yeah.
And that part of just, she took this very naive and maybe stupid, horny.
He doesn't seem smart.
Horny teenager and manipulated him and Casey Affleck, who isn't much smarter, to do this thing, right? Is, again, it's really, really interesting, and that her sexuality, while it is conniving and it's manipulative, and that scene where she's like giving him the blowjob and then she like keeps stopping. She's like,
it's
okay,
awful.
It's awful.
It's awful.
It is awful.
And then she finishes that by saying, "Oh, well, maybe Russell is just more of a man than you are."
Right. And presumably I'm just gonna do this with him instead.
Yeah.
And get
it's
him.
but it's a brilliant scene.
It is a brilliant
right?
scene.
And that we are always focused on Joaquin Phoenix, right?
Yes.
The shirtless Joaquin Phoenix. We just keep seeing her head move down, right? And then come back up into the shot.
Yeah. It's filmed in an incredible way.
It really is.
Yeah. And again, he is a phenomenal actor in this film.
And especially again when you think, obviously for people our age, right, who saw River Phoenix in films, right? And really can remember when River Phoenix was like the it guy. Yes. And all those siblings around River Phoenix were like a non-entity.
Right.
And you really, and it's so remarkable to me that if you're someone like Gus Van Sant, who again worked with River Phoenix, and River Phoenix then tragically dies, and you're like, well, okay, I'm going to put his brother in this film. And his brother is incredible.
Incredible.
Amazing. And it must have just been like, who knew, right? He's just so remarkable in this film. So we do have then, again, so Nicole is sexy, right? But I do think, right, with this edge that really is repellent at the same time, which is supposed to be the case, right? And so I think that you're right, that we are supposed to be treading this really weird line whereby we are repelled by her, but we are also supposed to understand and really sympathize with this attraction, right, that she exudes for other people, which is a really, really hard thing to do in a film.
And in a satirical way.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the film is satire.
Yes, it is.
And so that's another level of it where you're not really supposed to take this character seriously. Because she is so outlandish, and she does seem, and again, the Ileana Douglas character, which is sort of the foil to Nicole Kidman, right, and it's a wonderful character, especially at the very end, it was brilliant. But the Ileana Douglas is like, I'm a real woman. I live in reality, right? This is what was going on, and Nicole is just in La La Land, but in a way that's also, again, very convincing to everyone around her, even though she is in La La Land by thinking she's going to be the next Jane Pauley
Diane Sawyer
or whatever, other people sort of buy into it.
Yeah.
And again, I love that scene where she's with, what's his name? The guy who was on, I don't remember what he's on, but the scene about the letter where she goes to the hotel and he tells her about that letter that a famous person wrote, right?
Yeah. It's George Segal.
George Segal.
In his cameo.
Right. A great George Segal moment. Yeah. Okay. And I get George Segal actually and Sidney Pollack kind of confused.
Yes.
Going back and forth.
Understandably.
Okay.
Yes.
But when George Segal tells her, there was this famous person who, everybody watches, who basically said, I just like give the best blowjobs ever, and that's why you should hire me. And then it turns out she was the one that wrote that letter rather than the station manager.
Yes.
And if you haven't seen the film, this probably makes no sense to you.
But it's showing up Nicole's stupidity. The character does not understand what is happening and has to keep asking. And so there is the sense that she simply can't swim in the big leagues. I think I just mixed my metaphors. But
no, and I think that's right. She's really not that smart. Yeah, and that's the. I think it's a brilliant scene where you can. It conveys she doesn't have the kind of sophistication to understand what George Segal is saying to her, right? And somebody who is that manipulative in terms of writing the letter themselves and saying it was written by somebody else,
and succeeding brilliantly.
And Nicole can't understand that. So for her, it's like, here's some dumb kids, and I'll get them to murder my husband.
But they'll be so bad at it that they will leave clues all over the place.
And they will tell everyone
about it, and then everything just completely falls apart. And we should probably mention that this, of course, is based on the Pamela Smart case in New Hampshire, where Pamela Smart, who I think that was much younger, did exactly this, started having a sexual relationship with a 15-year-old boy, and got him and his friends to murder her husband. And it was the same sort of thing, right? Does it incredibly badly, ineptly. And she is, I think, still in prison, actually, today. And I wonder, though, about the 15-year-old who actually did the murder. I don't know. I'm sure someone knows. But, so we have then a still sexual Nicole, but in a way that, as you say, is very satirical. It is interesting to me to think about, because, of course, that is still in a world, right, of the big three networks. It's in a world of the big three networks of things like Inside Edition, right, those kind of sort of true crime.
No internet.
And so, of course, Gus Van Sant is saying in not a subtle way at all, right, that TV is not just this sort of addiction for the people who watched it, but that people are willing to do anything to get onto TV and their 5 minutes of TV fame. And, of course, it would be a very different kind of film now, in terms of social media or whatever.
And she could be famous in 5 seconds on TikTok.
She could be, right? And basically just, join OnlyFans or whatever.
Right.
And become super famous at OnlyFans. Okay, so now maybe it's time. I mean, it's time chronologically in terms of order of films to talk about Eyes Wide Shut. A film which, as I think you pointed out, Nicole is actually not in Eyes Wide Shut very much. It really is the Tom show in terms of actual screen time.
For sure.
It is his journey.
It is 2 hours and 32 minutes, and I would clock Nicole's presence in the film at 40 minutes at most. That's a generous read of the Nicole screen time.
She is bookending his particular journey.
Yes.
We see her at the beginning, and we see her then again at the end.
And in his fantasies, or however you want to think about them, or nightmares.
Nightmares.
And we see her on the phone or something like that. But as just a touch point.
Yes.
Not having
Active partner doing stuff.
No.
So very, very famously, as some of you may remember, this was Stanley Kubrick's last film. He died, I think, when they were in post-production or something, soon before it was going to be released. Also famous, of course, because this is the film that everyone was waiting to see Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman together again after, Far and Away and Days of Thunder.
Right.
Films that were not super, super successful in lots of ways. So this was a big prestige film, working with Kubrick.
Well, and also Kubrick had only made, 5 films total.
Yes.
So
and wasn't someone who was super productive during the 1980s, that's for sure.
No.
And so lots of reasons, and famously also, it took forever to make, right? It was something like a 2-year shoot. And the fact that it is about in some ways, disintegrating married couple, a married couple that has issues surrounding sort of sexuality and commitment and infidelity. And then Tom and Nicole ended up getting a divorce in its immediate wake, got tons of press. But it was also a film that I think, if you would agree with me, when it first came out, people really were waiting for, I think this is fair to say, they were waiting for hot scenes of Tom and Nicole doing it in this movie.
Yes.
And we were all disappointed.
Yes. The film was billed, or at least the clips, the trailers, however you want to think about it, as this super hot sex, almost a sex tape of Tom and Nicole. And and potentially also others. Because we saw some, again, if I'm remembering the trailer right, which I saw a million years ago, we also saw little clips of the orgy scenes or little clips of the, again.
Like Lily Sobieski with the businessmen.
Right.
Like
we
that,
see that things are tantalizing them, and that maybe Tom and Nicole will have sex with other people.
Yes. And it was...
and again, with Kubrick, you just never know.
You just never know.
So
because he was not a filmmaker who was known for being a particularly erotic filmmaker, right? Again, had done several, of course, super huge films, very influential throughout the 1960s and 1970s. But yes, this was not Kubrick wheelhouse. Even, obviously, A Clockwork Orange, not an erotic film, a very disturbing one, right, in a lot of ways. The Shining, also not a film known for its, even though it has nudity, right? Not a film, certainly, that anyone would ever, I hope, describe as an erotic film or a film dealing with sexuality in any way. And so this was really a surprise. Everyone was so excited. Everyone was so disappointed. But we do have Tom's character, I don't even remember his name, Dr. whatever.
Bill Hartman.
Bill, thank you. Who ends up on this weird sort of sexual journey after he has had this conversation with his wife, Nicole, who admits that at a dinner party, not a dinner, they were on vacation. She sees a man,
a naval man, interestingly, harkening back to Sam Neill.
Yes.
Right.
And that their sexual attraction is so immediate, so overwhelming, that she is prepared to leave Tom Cruise and their daughter forever just to basically go
spend one night with this man.
And I will say, I have always thought that Tom's reaction shots when obviously Nicole has this amazing monologue, but the reaction shot when we go back to Tom, I actually think that's Tom's best acting ever.
Okay.
Maybe not. I do love Frank T.J. Mackey in Magnolia, and I mean that's a fantastic role.
Sure.
But the fact that Tom is able, I think, really to convey this incredible shock, right? And this sexual jealousy and this, because of course, doesn't he kind of start at the conversation in sort of this lighthearted kind of
they've just smoked pot.
Yes.
They've maybe had sex. I mean, we don't know, because again, this kind of cuts off of another scene of them having sex, but she's in her underwear and they're smoking pot, and he's sort of like, oh, you're so high. What are you talking about? And it starts out by him basically saying, men have a sex drive and women do not.
Oh, yes.
And that's where it all comes from.
Yes.
She's sort of like, oh, we went to this party last night, hosted by Sidney Pollack, and he was with these two women just kind of casually flirting, and she was with this Hungarian guy, again, who very much wanted to sleep with her.
Yes.
And he's like, well, you're never going to do that because it's just not in you. Like, I trust you. You're a mother, you're a wife. And he basically implies that she doesn't have the sexual motivation or the sexual inclinations to be unfaithful to him. And that also she just doesn't even have the sex drive to do it. He basically makes a generalization about all women. And she's like, what are you talking about?
And there was this time when...
And there was this time where I basically, like, almost slept with this other guy. And, of course, it doesn't happen. And she's like, well, when he left, I was relieved, but I almost did this. Or I thought about doing it. And this sends Tom on a journey. A nighttime journey. Throughout the village, or the fake village, I should say, in New York City, because is not filmed in New York.
Yes.
But throughout the village, where basically everyone who encounters him is sexually all over him.
Yes.
I mean, from the daughter of a patient who has just died, who's making out with him, this sex worker he meets on the street who is inviting him up. The temptation is everywhere. And it is almost, I mean, I was laughing because it's just so ridiculous that everyone who meets Tom Cruise is just throwing themselves at him.
He is Tom Cruise.
Yeah, but he's also like, in non-organic ways.
In a non-organic way.
He's like walking around, and all of a sudden, all these people are throwing themselves. Anyway, he re-meets rather, a guy that he knew in med school, whose name is Nick Nightingale, who tells him about this party that he's a piano player now, he's not a doctor, that Nick Nightingale will be playing the piano at a later hour.
By the way, can I jump in?
Yes.
And this is Todd Field.
Yes.
The director of In the Bedroom, which we talked about a few episodes ago.
Yes. Okay, right. So Todd Field tells him that he will be playing the piano at this very, very secretive and
out in the
mysterious
mansion
and that he's blindfolded when he plays the piano, but the blindfold wasn't on so tight the last time he played, and so he saw insane things happening and these amazing women, and tantalizes Tom Cruise enough to make him want to go.
And he has to rent a tuxedo in order to go.
Right.
And take a cab out to the...
And a mask.
Out to the boondocks. And so we have this element of mystery. Again, are these women being like sacrificed to these sexually licentious elites?
Wearing these like cloaks, they're in these masks, they're in
It's like satanic, right? Is it a black mask? And basically, as far as we know in the film, or what the film argues, is that it's pretty much a whole bunch of nothing. Right? This is what Sidney Pollack's character says, that it's just this play, it's cosplay, and that there is basically an orgy going on, or at least a gangbang.
Sure. But nobody's getting murdered. There's no ritual sacrifice. It's a bunch of basically sex workers having sex with all these prominent people from New York and maybe elsewhere.
And getting great tips.
Right.
And getting great tips.
Right.
And so, but then we do have then this sort of turnaround to the end where Nicole's character comes back, and this attempt at sort of this return to what? She's resistant to the idea. He wants, right, this kind of emotional security from her, right, and this promise of sexual fidelity. At the end of the film, when they're kind of walking around, right, before Christmas,
when they're at FAO Schwartz,
yes,
or what's supposed to be FAO Schwartz,
looking at the toys with their daughter, and she is not willing, right. We have the exchange where he's like, "Oh, forever," and she says no, and so there is then this sense that certainly they are still that their sexual life has been maybe reinvigorated, right? Of course, very famously, the last word of the film is fuck.
Right.
But still this sense of kind of tension and dissension under the surface. Would you agree with that?
Yes. There's definitely like the message, this may have made our marriage hotter.
Yes.
And in again, a kind of strange way, because when he confesses to her that all of this has happened and that he was tempted, she's crying and she has to make sense of it. But then she's just like, well, you were tempted, I was tempted. Sometimes there's fantasies, sometimes there's realities. We've sort of made it through it. And now, let's just like get it on. Yeah. And that's
in our incredible New York apartment.
Right. Right. And we're so rich and you're
I'm
and you're
gorgeous.
just like a basic doctor. That's the other thing. I mean, he's just like a basic like house call doctor. He's not like the chief of, I don't know, whatever.
Neurosurgery at Beth Israel or something.
No, he's just like a basic doctor that makes house calls and he has this incredible apartment on Central Park West. She doesn't work. Okay. So there's all that.
Well, and then we do have, right, this kind of class moment where it's made very clear, right? Because again, Sidney Pollack's like, you had the rental tag for the tuxedo, right?
And,
in your
and
pocket
you took
or whatever.
the cab.
And you took the cab, and basically you're not at this level of elite.
Right. And nor are you somebody famous or important.
Yes.
You're just this like lackey that
we
make house calls.
Drug overdoses and stuff, right? Like with the woman
Right.
at the beginning at the party. So this, again, the film is closely followed by their divorce. There is also the conspiracy theory. I don't know if you've ever heard this one, that Stanley Kubrick is murdered because the elites are really having these sex parties where they're murdering people. And that Stanley Kubrick...
this is an expose.
Expose, right? He uncovers this dark secret world.
But I do have to tell you, Christine, okay, because I was underwhelmed by Eyes Wide Shut. And
Yes,
I'll tell you
I was too.
Okay, and here's the thing, having seen it now last night.
Yeah.
After Eyes Wide Shut, I watched SVU, in which the second episode of the new season actually has a sex orgy club.
Interesting.
And one of the reasons why Eyes Wide Shut seemed underwhelming is because now it's just like, what? Like, we see this all the time. We see this all the time now. I mean, not me personally, but these ideas of people going into these sort of secret, maybe satanic, ritual places.
Dungeon clubs.
It is a cliche among cliches.
Yes.
And so while that may have been shocking at the time, and certainly with Tom and Nicole in it, it upped the ante.
Yes.
Watching it again, the SVU episode was more suspenseful. Okay.
I'm sure
And
it
the
was.
other thing about the film that was underwhelming to me watching it now in the, as I said, post Dan Savage or whoever, right?
Yeah.
Is the idea that Nicole's like, well, I thought about another guy. I thought about having sex with another guy. And he just goes, he goes on this like crazy journey because his wife is like, I'm attracted to other people sometimes. That just felt like it was so hollow to me. Although I understand that's the point of the film. Again, later, now that we're talking about, again, all kinds of arrangements and there are, all kinds of marriages and all kinds of marriages that are depicted on film or on serial prestige dramas or however you want to think about it, that the impetus for the journey to me isn't as believable.
I agree. I agree with that. But I also think it's in such a weird I mean, you're absolutely right, that we don't have sort of, I don't know, when Kubrick is making this film, we don't have national newspapers talking about polygamy, or whatever, or open poly relationships or whatever. So we're not in that moment yet, right? But we are in a moment, right, when Eyes Wide Shut comes out. So obviously we have Sex and the City, right? We've had also that whole span of 1970s films that threw in sex scenes when they didn't even need to exist, right? Where the whole idea of every single 1970s film is that someone is having an affair, right? Maybe they're trying to hide it, right? But they are having affairs, right? We have this kind of whole post-John Updike, right, Erica Jong moment. And Kubrick is coming out of, he's that generation, right? He's that generation. And so that's what I agree with you. That's what's kind of funny, is that we are presented with a scenario in Eyes Wide Shut that actually doesn't seem that shocking, right? I mean, the murder part notwithstanding, right? But the idea that, as you say, this confession, I wanted to sleep with this other person, that it's presented to us as so destabilizing for Tom Cruise's character. And in a sense, you're kind of like, well, did Kubrick really think that, right? That is a reasonable, and if Kubrick did think that, again, he's not, even though Kubrick started making films so young, but we're not in 1945.
And we're not in an Adrian Lynn,
sex thriller.
And we're not in Indecent Proposal.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Which, of course, she does have sex with him.
Yes.
And then you have to deal with the ramifications of that. This is about a kernel of an idea.
Yeah.
And I think, again, what we were all teased by was that it was going to turn into, hey, Nicole is part of the orgy, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
he's going to
Yes.
go there, and
And
he's
she's
going
going-
to
yes.
see her, and she is going to be one of those masked women.
Yes.
And of course, that is not the case.
It's not the case. But that's when I think, when I think back to that rumor, right, and maybe more than a rumor, who knows, that Kubrick is mining their own marital difficulties, right? And on top of that, the totally unproven rumor, right, that she
Ewan
had an affair with
McGregor.
Ewan McGregor. And so that makes some kind of sense, right? If it becomes not a cultural moment thing, but it becomes a much more zeroed in Tom and Nicole, right? That Tom Cruise as a person is like, what? You are possibly sexually attracted to someone else who's not me, Tom Cruise?
Right.
And so that is what makes more sense to me.
It does.
Right?
It also, as I said before, maybe not on the pod, but Kubrick's kind of fascination with Nicole and his zooming in on her body, on her face, on the voyeuristic viewpoint of Kubrick on Nicole. I mean, it's clear that he is invested in her, even though she is not in most of the film.
Yes.
The scenes that do have Nicole, I mean, he is into her.
She's naked. And of course, I mean, this is
the first scene of the film is her naked.
Yes. And this is something, of course, I mean, just in terms of her career, right? This is something that she has always been comfortable with nudity, right? Very famously did a play where she was naked on stage, right? Every single night. And so, and we have sort of, again, she's not nude in Dead Calm, but we see her back, right? Sort of, we see sort of, she has taken off her top. We don't see her from the front, right? And so, and there's not a ton of nudity in To Die For, if I remember correctly, right? We have all those scenes of Joaquin Phoenix's bare chest that Gus Van Sant clearly loves. But she's always been comfortable with that. And so, I mean, I agree with you. Kubrick does seem very invested, right? In her, but again, not in this kind of sense that she is this unfeeling statue, right?
No.
That's what Tom Cruise's character, in a sense, might think about her, right? That she is this object of beauty. But of course, the whole point of that film is that she is not that, right? She is, in fact, has this sexual imagination, this sexual life, apart from her husband. Okay, so we only have a little bit of time left.
But in some ways, we don't need a whole
We don't.
lot. And
We don't.
And
We
suffice to say, we hated Baby Girl.
Hated it.
And I would
Hated it.
much rather spend an hour talking about these other three films.
Yes.
Although, again, underwhelmed by Eyes Wide Shut. But Kubrick is worth spending the time on.
Yes.
And again, the historical resonance of that film, all of it is worth talking about.
Absolutely.
Baby Girl
Absolutely.
was a piece of shit.
Junk. Total junk.
And again, Nicole has recently also one of the theories behind the breakup too is that she's just been working too much.
Yes.
Right? She's in everything now.
TV series,
every-
terrible series, all the stuff.
Terrible things, good things, everything in between. She's in it now. And so Baby Girl to me falls into one of those scripts that who knows who put it on her desk and she's like, this seems kind of cool and this seems kind of subversive and it can be like this BDSM thing and I'm
taboos,
I'm up for
boundaries.
it. I'm up for it. And I'm up for like being naked again and like
Looking amazing.
And looking amazing.
Looking amazing.
But the problem with Baby Girl, which again, I mean, do we need to summarize Baby Girl?
No, not really. She's a woman. She's married to Antonio Banderas, theater director. She is unorgasmic. She cannot experience orgasm with her totally hot husband that she's been married to for 20 years.
Right.
Masturbates to porn on the internet. She ends up having a sexual relationship with a much, much, much younger intern.
She's like a head honcho
at the company
at
that she
some
runs.
company. And he is her dom, I guess.
Yeah,
of some
he is her dom.
way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she is his sub.
is his sub, and they have the most uninteresting dom sub relationship that I have
totally boring.
ever seen. Totally boring.
And they have, as far as I'm concerned, they have little to no chemistry.
No.
The characters are completely undrawn. He isn't even, I mean, he's very handsome, right? But we don't have enough of a sense of him as a character to understand his sexual appeal, other than the fact that he puts himself immediately in the position of bossing her around, basically. And with fearlessly.
Right.
And that this is so upside down, right? This is so almost like carnival, right? We are upending these particular norms of the workplace, that it's such a shock that this is his appeal. Simply that he dares to do these things.
Right.
And
we're also supposed to have some sort of political takeaway
Yes.
here about, sexual harassment in
Yes.
the workplace and power
dominant women
dynamics
who
and-
just want to be bossed around
I
at
don't know.
home.
I don't know
and-
exactly what, but we're supposed to have some kind of takeaway about, a reverse Me Too, or I don't know.
It's unclear.
It's unclear.
Unclear. And this is also, it really, much like Eyes Wide Shut, it's a film that claims to be daring.
Yes.
Right. And obviously this director is not Kubrick.
No.
But it's a film that claims to be daring, but is so unerotic, right? We have just maybe a couple, perhaps the best scene in the entire film is when they're dancing to Father Figure by George Michael.
Right.
And it's kind of the only moment where we have, and again, it's never clear in terms of their kind of compatibility. I mean, as people, right? Because we do have a scene like that looks kind of tender, but then we have other scenes and then she's kind of, I don't know, I don't want you to see other women. It's completely unclear. But the big mystery, of course, that we've talked so much about Baby Girl is, why isn't she sexually satisfied with her husband? Not just because he's Antonio Banderas.
Right.
But we are supposed to think that a Spanish theater director is himself completely closed up in terms of sexuality.
Right.
She cannot speak to him openly about it. When she does try to kind of playfully talk to him and say, this is kind of what I want, he's like, why are you doing that weirdo thing? What's wrong with you? She's not married to an accountant, an evangelical Christian accountant from Ohio.
No.
She's married to a Spanish theater director.
Right.
In New York City.
Played by Antonio
Banderas.
Right.
And that is never answered, right?
No.
Why is their sexual relationship the way that it is? And so we do have a very different dynamic as in Eyes Wide Shut, right? Eyes Wide Shut, we're supposed to think they are banging, right?
Sure.
They're banging, they're doing
Sure.
it, they have an active sex life. There just is, again, this current.
And actually in the other two films as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
I mean, we don't get any sense in the other two films that those characters also aren't having a very healthy sex
absolutely.
life.
Absolutely.
This is the first one where you're seeing her as, again, having these expectations or having these wants and needs that can be unfulfilled by this kind of, I don't know, buttoned up husband that can't communicate with her, but seemingly can communicate on all other levels, or I don't know. I mean, there's just not enough information in this film about, from my recollection of it, which I cannot watch it again.
Which I did do.
I don't know.
Which
you
I
watched
did
it
do.
again. You watched it again.
And I won't say that the only thing that made me like it a tiny bit more is that, of course, again, much like Eyes Wide Shut, you walk into Baby Girl thinking that you were going to get a sort of 1980s era, right? This kind of sex
9.5
thriller,
weeks.
9.5 weeks, again, indecent proposal, right? All of this stuff. And it's not that.
Right.
Right. And so, but I do think when you sort of compartmentalize that and say, this is just not that film. The film thinks it's super erotic and sexy, and it's just not.
No.
But when you kind of get over that, you can say, okay, is this offering me anything else? And it's still really not, but at least you don't experience that disappointment. But it really,
No, you know what you're getting. You know you're
You know what
getting
you're
her
getting.
like on the floor, on all fours, and then that's
it. And if we talked at the time when we saw it, the obvious comparison is 9.5 weeks.
Sure.
Right. A film that came out, 40 years ago? That is so interesting in terms of a woman who does not think that she is interested in BDSM. This man drags her into it. She becomes his sub. They have this incredibly charged sexual relationship that is very damaging in a lot of ways to her. She doesn't really flourish because of it. And in some ways you want Baby Girl to be sort of like that. But the only thing we learn in the film is that Antonio Banderas learns how to use his hand. That's it. That's the
But
happy.
also, so correct me if I'm wrong again, we saw it a while ago. The end, the guy that she's having the affair with comes to their house.
So that's sort of in the middle of the film, right? So he comes to the house to return her laptop, her country house, right? The beautiful, gorgeous country house.
Right.
And it really is when she freaks out that he is having a sexual relationship, right, with her kind of underling. Remember, and the underling then threatens her.
Right.
And so
that's when it becomes workplace drama whatever.
But not much happens with that.
Right.
Because, in effect, the only thing that happens is that Antonio Banderas finds out about the affair because she tells him.
Right.
Right. He has a heart attack or a quasi-heart attack or a
Right.
panic attack.
Right.
And so that's pretty much it. Samuel, the young intern character, he gets a job in like the Netherlands or someplace. And the only thing is that we have the scene where one of her employees, sort of a high-up executive, basically says to her, well, I hear you're hot to trot in effect and we should have sex. And she shuts him down. And that's it.
Right.
That's it. That's literally it.
So we never get a sense of her sort of sexual evolution or revelations based on this relationship or the ways in which it's changed her or...
Well, the only thing is that at the very end, the last scene, her husband is able to bring her to orgasm.
Right. No,
Because he has, again, discovered the use of his hand. Which apparently in 20 years, she has never once thought, maybe I should have an honest conversation with my incredibly sexy and handsome husband.
Right.
He still looks amazing at like 60.
He does.
Like gorgeous.
Right.
Gorgeous man.
Yes.
And so that's the only sense, right? That her having, but it didn't, of course, need to be a BDSM affair, right? In order for her.
No, it was never that she wanted to have a BDSM relationship with Antonio Banderas.
No, not at all.
She just wanted to have an orgasm.
Yes. And so we table all of that, right? Because there's no indication that she's going to have that kind of relationship with Antonio Banderas.
Oh.
Just that he now says, oh, wait a minute, my wife had an affair, and so maybe we should have a frank talk about our own sex life. And so it's a mystery. It's a total mystery why it is.
And a real injustice to Antonio Banderas, I will say. I mean, who one does not have to imagine a bridge too far in getting Antonio Banderas to be up for whatever.
Well, and of course, it's so remarkable. I mean, for anyone who saw sort of the Almodovar films, right, that he did in the 1980s and 90s, where it's like, you know, these absolutely sort of, again, I don't know, frontier jumping, right, countercultural, just absolutely over the top, you know, films. And then, I don't know.
It is the oddest casting.
It is the oddest casting. It should have been, I hate to impugn accountants from Ohio who are, you know, Mormons or whatever. But it's just, it made absolutely no sense. So we would say, and we probably should wrap up very soon, but to go back to the beginning, this supposedly is the film, right, that Keith Urban objects to, of all the things, he objects to Baby Girl, that it's too frank in its sexuality,
or that she
too
was,
many orgasm
or that
scenes.
she was so method. That was the other thing, that she could never get out of that character and wanted to, I guess, like drink milk off the floor. Who knows all the time, and that was problematic for him. Again, it's very unclear about what exactly is going on. I mean, again, the idea of her, I can see, you know, just as a spouse, why it would be hard to watch your spouse. But I mean, she is an actress.
She's an actress.
Been doing this
I mean,
in a million. She's been doing this with Hugh Grant and Liev Schreiber, and recently, and then a million other people in other films.
And this is like, again, she's always been an incredibly bold actress.
Yes.
Again, as we said, frank with nudity, right? Frank with sex scenes. And the idea that you're married to someone for 20 years and after 20 years, you're like, oh, wait a minute, right? I have a problem with this one. That just seems very odd to me.
She's also an experimental actress.
Yes.
She's in a lot of different kinds of films. She's willing to go for it. And some of her films are better than others. But she's, again, if you're married to Nicole Kidman, you would think, yes, this is somebody who makes lots of choices and has no problem. This isn't Sarah Jessica Parker.
No.
This is somebody who is comfortable with their body, who's a great body.
Yes.
And,
again, beautiful.
And,
she's exquisitely beautiful.
Yeah. And who is willing to kind of up for anything interesting, up for interesting roles.
And again, we didn't even talk about Dogma.
No.
Right.
No.
But then also I think the movie that she made, what is it called? Birth, where she plays the woman, right? She's in a bathtub with like a 10-year-old boy who supposedly is like the reincarnation of her husband. These are bold choices. And again, choices having to do with eroticism, with nudity. Yes, and it's just so amazing to me. And I think probably amazing to most people that this is, as you say, this isn't Sarah Jessica Parker. Not to impugn SJP.
No,
but she is not someone who's like...
We know that very, very famously she has an anti-nudity clause.
Yes. Wearing the bras in the sex scenes, the whole shebang.
She's uncomfortable with it.
The whole shebang, no pun intended.
Right.
So But the last thing I think I do want to say about Nicole before we leave is that, so we do have, I mean, she really is. She's maybe the first superstar Australian actress, right? And as you say, has made so many varied films. We do maybe, I think we're going to talk next time about Diane Keaton, who also in some ways has a a similar profile, right? Of making these radically, as much as someone might think of Diane Keaton, right, as making those sort of, I don't know, like not housewife.
The Nancy
Meyers sort of films, right? Her films in the 1970s and 1980s, so different. And I think that Nicole really has that kind of palette in terms of her films, which is so incredibly I mean, I think she's so remarkable. And again, we didn't even talk about The Hours, where she wins an Oscar for Best Actress.
And wears a prosthetic.
Yes. But although, of course, if I remember correctly, the only sort of sexy thing in The Hours is where she kisses her own sister. But
it's been a while for me with The Hours.
I'm never going to watch it again. That's a no for me. And as fantastic as Nicole is, and again, she's a queen, and we certainly hope that she moves through this. You know, Tom might be single now.
Well, the other thing about Nicole, which we haven't talked about, but I'll just bring up because it would be remiss to leave this out, is that Nicole not only became a superstar for her roles, but also for her fashion.
Yes, absolutely.
And Nicole is, I would say, as well known for her choices in roles as for her choices of red carpet outfits.
Yes.
And wearing some of the most iconic red carpet outfits.
And because she has such a beautiful figure, right? So tall.
She can pull off anything.
Anything. And I think the one thing I would wish for Nicole, if she moves on to husband number 3, she needs someone who is tall. I think we can agree. I think we as a nation can agree with that.
She should move beyond 5'6", 5'7", aspirationally.
I want like a 6'4" like athlete or actor for Nicole.
Like an A-Rod or something.
Yeah. Well, not him, because
right.
But yes. Okay, well, I think that's all the time that we have, Lauren.
Okay, Christine.
But I could talk about Nicole for hours more.
And there are so many more films, and maybe she will, and TV and all of it, and maybe she will return in another podcast. But until then,
Harpies out.
Across the land.